Speaking of not knowing where the hell we are, if I ever found myself in a place, in a wide open space, in a last empty place, and did not know where in the sweet mother of pearl
You wouldn't call me.
I wouldn't call you. If I had one phone call, if I had just a couple of bars left, just a couple of last moments before I lost all technological savvy, before everything was drained from me, I can guarantee the first person I would call, and he would say, do you have matches? Peter Stark joins us this morning. PeterStarkAuthor.com is where you should go. He, of course, is the author of The Last Empty Places, Young Washington. We've been talking a lot about Washington. As a matter of fact, Peter, good morning. Welcome aboard, as always, my friend.
Good morning, Jimmy Mack and Lindsay.
Good morning. Can I tell them about the drink?
I was just going to do that. Please, Peter, before we get in, you got to hear about the drink. Tell him.
Okay, tell me the drink.
So, Peter, we had a big party, a ribbon cutting party for the opening of our studio in New Orleans this week, and we had Master Chef Marty. He's been a presidential chef for 7 different presidents, where he's cooked at the White House, and he came in and he was making a drink. He said, Lindsay, would you like to try a drink they made in the 1700s that George and Martha Washington served? And I'm like, how do you say no to that? I'm like, sure. Well, I didn't know what he was going to make. It was a syllabub, which is white wine and whipped cream, basically, which if I had known, I probably would have turned it down. And he served it with the spoon, and I just put on my best thank you face because the stories were so cool. But I was thinking about you the whole time because you've been on my brain, both that and my husband has become a new huge fan of yours, Peter Stark, because he drove to Cape Cod by himself, and then I drove home with him. But he listened to Young Washington, and now he's hooked on all of your stuff. So we're all. I hadn't done Young Washington yet. Now I've done the back half of it, not the front half, unfortunately. So I'll circle back. But enough to know that George Washington was not who I thought he was.
Not the young one. The young one was not who you thought he was. But, and talk about somebody who was lost and didn't know who he was. That was the dude right there. The 20-year-old George Washington. He figured it out. And when he married Martha at age 27, or he might have been 26, but I think that more than anything, like straightened that boy out. With Martha, like, saying, George, like you're just trying too hard. You don't have to try so hard. Like chill out, dude.
Plenty of women that aren't married out there, George. Plenty of women that aren't married.
but he was like everything he did. He was so prickly, to his superior officers who were British. And he felt he was never getting enough recognition, never getting enough money, never getting this. There were these other rival officers who should not be his rival. He should be superior to those guys. And it just went on and on. And his boss, Governor Dinwiddie of Virginia Colony, this very brass-buttoned British guy, he got so many letters from young George, who was serving as a young officer under him out in the woods. And these letters just kept pouring in from young George. And finally, Governor Dinwiddie writes him back. And you can literally see Governor Dinwiddie rolling his eyes between the lines. Like, George, you've had plenty. Just go back to work. And it's like, no, you do not need to come back to the plantation country where all your friends are and the love of your life who's married to another man is. You need to stay out at your post in the wilderness. You have no reason for coming back here. Stay there. So anyway, it goes on like that. And he's a real piece of work at that age.
And by the way, you bring up something really interesting, too, because, partnerships are often what defines a journey, whether it's a journey through life or a journey through the wilderness. And you brought up Martha as well. And you kind of make a point of her kind of really kind of settling him in and kind of settling him down. And it's interesting that, and people have written books about this, of course, in great detail. But one of the things the country was also blessed with at its inception with the first president, second president, third, some extraordinary women were behind these men. The first 2 presidents in particular. The third one, we got a little conversation going on about that. But
nice pivot, by the way.
Oh, no, yeah, that is a nice
that third president, by the way, the woman in his life is a whole other conversation worth of a whole multitude of studies. But the first two first ladies, in many ways, are a great example that this country was built. And we've got totally in the weeds here, by the way, Lindsay, because after all, I do have the recipe for the drink that Chef Marty. Because Lindsay had the same thought as well too. I had it. I was like, oh my God, Peter's got to taste this drink and find out what it's all about. We got the recipe for you. But
oh yeah. Do you want to put it out here online? The recipe. It sounds like it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they did homemade. The one that Chef Marty was making, you can find a little bit of a different one online, but they do homemade, like house-made whipped. I hate to call it whipped cream because then I'm thinking of Cool Whip, but like a heavy whipped cream.
It was cream that was whipped.
Thank you, exactly.
Okay.
And so he puts that in it with some nutmeg and rosemary, and then he pours the white wine in it. And by the way, I noticed he wasn't using a good white wine, and this is a presidential chef. Maybe that's because we only brought him crap. I don't know. But he didn't have a fancy wine. I don't think it matters once you pour it in cream, though. It's like, I'm not going to put the $100 bottle of wine into cream.
That was his thinking, by the way.
Like a dry Sauvignon Blanc. You're not going to taste those subtleties with whipped cream.
Yeah. He was using cupcake. I said, no offense, cupcake, but
it's like subtle notes of heavy cream in this wine.
Subtle, not so subtle.
I was going to say, man, there is a certain kind of there's a residue of cow here. I mean, that's just kind of the feeling.
Ew, why does that make me want to go? Ew.
Undertones of grassy pasture.
But I brought up the women, Peter, not just because of the presidential kind of connection here, but one of the things, and you do a great job in your books as well too, about some of the adventures that people take, and we often kind of forget that when these men are kind of carving out paths across the West, or when these men are carving out lives of really kind of hard scrabble in the beginning sort of lives, it often, even now with all the research and history done, we often leave out the story of some of these remarkable women who have cut through the brush of both Washington, D.C., but also the brush of the wilderness, right?
Oh, so much, yeah. I mean, it's a huge issue. It's such an important part of what actually happened, but there's so little actually written down about it, and so it's a lot of these couples say think of your kind of archetypal pioneer couple out there hacking out a farm in the forest. And, these guys, neither man nor woman, I mean, they might not have been literate, but they weren't keeping documentation of what they were doing on a daily basis. So you don't really see that side of you don't see women much in that whole frontier exploration world. There, with some exceptions, we have a good friend in Missoula, Onyx Smith, who it was closely associated with the Sundance Institute of Film for quite a long time, and she made a film called Heartland that was based on the actual diaries of a woman, I think Eleanor Smith Pruitt, anyway, Eleanor Pruitt, somebody or other, who came out to the high plains of Wyoming and was a woman homesteader on her own. And it's a really dramatic story, and the movie is very cool too. But it's you see that side of it in a way that it's very hard to find that in a very vivid way, the way it's done in this movie Heartland. And I've got, it's funny. I'll do a pivot here. That
pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot. That's the French. That's the French. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But the pivot. So, I just the night before last finished the final revisions of this book. I've been writing about Coronado and the search for the 7 cities of gold. It's called the title now is called Lost Cities of El Norte: Coronado's Epic Expedition, the Unconquered West, and the Birth of American Indian Resistance is what it's called. And so I'm very excited about it. The publisher is excited about it. It's coming out next spring. But in the course of that book, I came across some really interesting geography that has to do directly with women. And that is that for a long time, these early European and early Spanish explorers in the Americas, especially in Mexico, were looking for what was called the island of California, and it was known as this sort of terrestrial paradise, and it was said to be peopled by black women without any man among them, for they live in the manner of the Amazons. And it was a big island off the west coast of North America, kind of approximately located where California is now. And it's a fascinating story because that the idea that there was this incredible island of California was disproven by various expeditions and cartographers. But every time it was disproven, that knowledge was lost. And so it was the idea that the island of California existed lived on for 200 years, from the mid 1500s to the mid 1700s. And I've just thought it was a fascinating phenomena that there's this island off the West Coast, peopled by these powerful women. And, so in some ways you could say, well, that's what, what surprises that? That's what California is today,
Yeah.
Island off the West Coast, peopled by powerful women. But it made me think about, okay, what is the attraction of this, this idea of Amazons, these powerful women and women who can live without men, and that they're in these sort of distant terrestrial paradises. The reason this came to be is that this notion of the island of California was because there was Jimmy Mack. You probably know this. You're so deeply literate back into the medieval times, and you probably speak medieval Spanish, but you might.
Or at least you can fake it really well.
Actually, Claire, by the way, who says hi, Peter, can actually translate Old English. I'm not kidding.
Can she? Yeah, that's so cool. And doesn't she know Old French too? Isn't she?
She's a medievalist. Yeah, Claire can do that. Claire can translate Old English and actually fight her way through Old French as well. Absolutely true. Crazy.
Does she speak French as well?
Yes, she does.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I know. She's incredibly literate. You are incredibly literate. Claire even more so.
Yeah.
I noticed nobody has thrown me into either of these categories, but that's fine.
No, Lindsay, you are like a library of music in your head.
Okay. I'm a music in my head. I'll take it. I speak music.
A library.
Go on.
Okay, so to the literary reference, which I think is pretty cool, that there was a Spanish novelist in right around the year 1500 named Garcia Rodriguez de Montalvo, and he wrote a really famous romance called Amadis de Gaula, who was about a medieval knight, and it was incredibly popular. And so all these conquistadors, these real guys, conquistadors, are reading these novels from Rodriguez de Montalvo about medieval knights and having all these adventures. And in one of his novels, there's an island called California, close on the side of terrestrial paradise, peopled by black women without any man, for they live in the manner of Amazons. And so that planted the idea in these conquistadors that there was an island of California populated by Amazons right up the coast. And they, this is in 1530, 1540. So, Columbus had arrived 40 years earlier, and the Spaniards had done a lot of exploration and colonization and a lot of not so great stuff in the Caribbean, but they hadn't really got to the Pacific coast, and at least not in any great numbers. And so there were expeditions sent in the 1530s. These guys up the Pacific coast from Mexico north, and these guys didn't know jack about what was up there. They knew nothing. and no European did. And so in a way, it was like this land. It's kind of like a fantasy land. They could kind of invent anything they want. They said, well, yeah, we don't know what's up there. There's an island of Amazon women up there. We're sure of it. So that's all by way of saying Last Empty Places works in strange ways. And one of the strange ways it works is that people invent stuff geographically that may or may not be there. And then they kill themselves metaphorically and sometimes literally trying to find it. So I'm using that as the thought for the day about Last Empty Places.
Well, go ahead, Lindsay.
Well, sorry, no, I get lost in figuring out exactly to your point there that, the separating the fact from fiction through all this. Like the other night, my husband and I watched, and I expected it. It was way sillier than I would have expected from Guy Ritchie, but we watched his new movie, The Fountain of Youth, with John Krasinski and Natalie Portman. Has anybody seen that?
Yes,
Either of y'all seen it?
No.
You should see it. You should see it, Peter. It's a goofball version of You, but go on.
It is a goofball version of You.
It's called I'm a goofball version of myself.
It's called The Fountain of Youth. Yeah, it's called The Fountain of Youth.
Is it like an explorer-based thing? Is that what?
Yes. They're looking for the Fountain of Youth, and they go on this. It's like a modern day National Treasure, Nicolas Cage kind of silly film, but it's Guy Ritchie who did it, which so I was expecting it to be a little deep. I mean, there's some hidden fun little nuggets and gems in there. It's worth you watching it, but I bring it up only because that separating fact from fiction. I wonder with you, like when you're piecing it together, is it like you get lost in movie mode? You're like, and have to be like, no, this is half of this is that imagination, but I'm actually looking for the truth. Like, Peter, have you ever wanted something to be true? Like, are you rooting for the island of California and its tribe of glittering warrior women, like rooting for certain things sometime to be like, I hope this is true. But I guess to your point, you could, if you're dead set on it being true, even if it's not, you will die in the process, perhaps, but literally or figuratively.
That is right. Well, and that's kind of true of life too.
Yeah.
If you're dead set on something being true, and it's not true, you can run into a lot of trouble, a lot of walls, a lot of that you're bending reality around to this concept that doesn't really exist, or this reality that doesn't really exist. And everything gets distorted when you start doing that. For the island of California, I mean, it's not a problem for me. I know it exists, and I know it's populated by powerful women, so I'm good.
This is what's really cool, by the way. And as you guys were talking, I was taking some notes, and I wrote here that the frontier is the front line of fiction. And
nice.
And what happens is you get the Spanish writers who dream of an island where there are powerful women called California, and of course they go to the island off of Spain, and there are no powerful women who rule themselves alone. But it doesn't mean the dream dies. It just means the dream exists once again at the frontier, and so that every time anybody approaches a frontier, they begin to say, "Well, that thing we were talking about." Well, we were wrong about where it was, but we're right about that it's out there. And that each time you hit an unknown terra incognita, every time you hit like ground where it is an undiscovered country to some degree, that the old myths come back in. And I love the fact that along with importing a lot of awful things, that the Spanish arrive into the New World and they bring with them their dreams of cities of gold and their dreams of islands populated by powerful women. And they bring all of this stuff with them. And that in many ways, what we do is we project the fantasy into the unknown, and then ironically, we create the human equivalent of it. In the book, The Last Empty Places, remember there's that whole segment where you're talking about the Native American trails along the Gulf Coast eventually, somehow, some way, end up becoming the route of the I-10 corridor. That's for real, by the way. Peter actually does.
This is for real.
It's for real. The path they walk, Lindsay, across the Gulf Coast, that the explorers and the Native Americans walk on the Gulf Coast, essentially becomes the carve-out that is the I-10. And it just is amazing to me that the imagination of people, that they're able to kind of say, well, since it isn't there, I'm actually going to create an island of powerful women. I'm going to call it Disney World. I'm going to create an island of powerful women. I'm going to make a dream factory. I'm going to literally make cyber reality. There's a land full of men inside of boxes thinking up dreams, and then Silicon Valley springs into the imagination and all of that kind of stuff. That people imagine the world they want to create. They find an open space. They project their myths and their dreams into it, and then they replicate it with a sort of human version of it, as it were. And this seems to be an ongoing thing, the obsession with the frontier, right?
Yeah. Oh, Jimmy, I think that's great insight. Yeah, and the frontier. I love that concept, and I've used that it's like the frontier, the blank spot on the map. It's always it's like a blank screen on which you project your fantasies, your visions, your hopes, your dreams. The blank spot is, but as you say, that it keeps moving, because as people reach the frontier and explore more, the blank spot moves on. Gets smaller, goes to a different spot. And I love your idea about California. I mean, it is just like the place of dreams, right? The place of fantasies and movies on the screen. And that all started with what's kind of crazy about that island of California is that it started when some ships sent by Cortez, the conqueror of the Aztecs, went up the west coast of Mexico. They got up a ways, and one of them got blown off course, and it for quite some days, and it ended up on this huge piece of land off the west coast of Mexico. And they said, wow, there's a massive island. So you know what that was that they hit?
What?
Tell us.
What?
Go on.
You all have been there, I'm sure. It's the Baja Peninsula.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, which of course resembles an island, which means that the truth gets muddled on its way back, and then it comes back around and shows up as the reality of a peninsula. That's crazy.
Yeah. It took 200 years to get that reality hammered into the European brain.
The European brain.
Peter, we're going to run out of time here.
Wait.
And, I know that you've been under the gun in regards to your deadline. Are you free and clear now for the time being? And can we?
I am. Yeah. It's amazing. I don't know what to do with myself.
I do.
We're out at Amy's
Go
family
explore.
island. What's that? Go explore. No, what we're doing is we're carrying heavy boulders and throwing them on the beach, so the cabin doesn't wash away.
Oh, okay, no, that's
the
important.
most Peter Stark thing of
That's
all time.
important. Hey, wait, Peter. Before I want to ask you real quick. We've just got a couple of minutes, but sort of on that note, and your quote unquote time off. What is it that separates an explorer from a tourist? And are you ever able to be a tourist? Or do you can you just go enjoy a place? Or are you like, oh, I need to know everything about
Oh,
this?
no, Peter, actually, you can find Peter at the seafood shop on Thanksgiving. Peter can enjoy.
That's exploring. I mean, in a way, tourism is exploring. It's all one continuum. It's not like there's one dividing line between tourism and exploration. I always think when our kids were small, it occurred to me, we live still on this really cool wilderness park in Missoula, Montana. It's like a street on one side and a wild park on the other. Wow. And going out with our kids, it was like, wow, this is like exploring the Amazon for them. Every step into this park. And so it's all relative to who you are and what your standard is and what you're interested in. I think maybe tourism is when you really do know a place it's familiar. So it's not unknown. It's known. And yet any place, there's kind of you could say it's the philosophy of travel or exploration or even tourism. But any place you go, even if it's familiar, there are always new things to discover. So in a way, everyone's an explorer all the time, as long as you have a sense of curiosity and are finding new stuff.
So the answer is no, is basically what you're saying.
So you're saying no.
So you're saying no, which, by the way, is a great answer to give.
Be a tourist?
Yeah, I mean, you are always an explorer. You are always an explorer, and you are always welcome. I'm going
Well,
to
he
talk.
said there's no difference, but there is, because the people that wear the Walt Disney ears, Mickey Mouse ears on the plane, those are tourists, and you, my friend, therefore, are not a tourist.
Yeah, and my friend, by the way,
How do you know I don't wear the Mickey Mouse ears on the plane? You
Well,
don't know
now I
that.
kind of want you to, I guess, actually.
if you actually take that picture, we will post it. There is no way you're taking that picture, so there's no way we're posting it. PeterStarkAuthor.com, of course, the author of The Last Empty Places. He's got a great book coming out about lost cities. We can't wait to read that as well. We actually have some plans for Peter in the future. I don't know if you know this, Peter. Lindsay just launched her new show on Wednesday, We Should Write, about the healing power of writing.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that. Cool.
Yeah.
Please be a guest on my show sometime.
please.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, anytime. Let me know.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I wanted to hear about. I know we're out of time, but how things are going in the new world down there in the new studio, and it sounds like you guys are rocking and rolling.
Well, I have
Everything we'll tell you off air.
I do have a plan to get you, Megan, Kate Nelson, Matthew Holbert, and a whole bunch of authors down here for my kind of symposium conversation. We're going to make Lindsay get her butt down here as well and bring a couple of songwriters.
I'll sit there and be stupid in the background
you
any
can
day,
bring your
guys.
songwriters, by the way, and bring
Okay.
your libraries.
You'll be making the white wine with whipped cream.
I will. I'll be drinking it all and getting stupider. We'll just underscore y'all's conversations with music. How about that?
It sounds great to
Okay,
me.
all right. No, I'd love to do that. That sounds so cool. And I know there's some really great literary gatherings down there, and I've sort of put them on my radar, and so definitely keep me in mind. And I might do a little research about this, about when might be a good time, whether you guys do this or not, for me to show up.
Well, you
whether
show up
you want
anytime.
me to or not.
You can.
Now
I
it's
want
happening.
you to all the time, and if you happen to show up here and knock on that door, even unannounced, you're one of the few people who won't be like, "No, the weddings are around the back." Peter Stark is a regular contributor here on RadioNemo.com. He is one of the official founding members of the Road Gang. Thank you, Peter, so much, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay and Jimmy Mack. We'll see you. We'll see you soon.
All right. And by the way, you bet your bottom dollar when that book comes out, Lindsay, we are going to have him on
Heck yeah.
and dig in deep. And I know you are a new fan, and your husband is a new fan. Guys, if you're not reading Peter Stark, you got issues.
You're dumb.
You're dumb.
You're so
You're
dumb.
because he does the impossible. He actually writes really smart things that everybody can enjoy.